At this point in time, at least on my channel, the Battlefield 1 beta is a bit of a dead horse, and I've been beating it pretty extensively for the last 3 or 4 videos, so I figured it was time to step back a little bit and do something a bit differently. I do have a video planned later this week for the Battlefield 1 rig build, so you can look forward to that, so that's why this video is a little shorter than usual. I noticed something interesting about spread in Battlefield games, and that is that it's distributed evenly over the spread circle. It's not distributed over the radius, it's distributed over the entire area, and the distinction between those two is pretty important, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So it's time to do a little math. I'm not someone who enjoys math, but it does serve a purpose, and it's going to serve a purpose here. I did somewhat enjoy math up until the last class I had to take for it in college, and that was a Foundations for Advanced Mathematics, and that was absolutely terrible. There is absolutely nothing that appeals to me about the dark magic proofs that you have to do there. That's beside the point. Anyway, we're going to look at how spread works in Battlefield. It's random, yes, but how? See, there's a difference between something that's distributed evenly across an area of a circle and a distribution that's even across the radius of a circle. Now, there's a variable used in Battlefield that affects which one is used. What this means is that, as I said, the bullet impacts are not going to be distributed evenly across the radius of the circle. Instead, they're actually biased toward the outside. But I said it was even. Well, I did. But you see, it's even across the area. And here's why the difference between distribution over the spread area and the spread radius is important. To figure out why, let's do some simple math. So if we divide the circle into 2 parts, and we use a ring halfway along the radius to do so, we get an inner circle and an outer ring, and together those make up the full circle. So therefore our inner area is going to be pi times our radius over 2 squared, and the outer area is going to be pi r squared minus the inner area. So for our example, let's just say our radius is 2. That gives us an inner area of pi, which is about 3, and an outer area which is 3 pi, which is about 9.4 or so. This means that the outer ring actually has 3 times the area of the inner circle. This means that a distribution that is even over the area results in the outer half of the radius getting by far the most shots, whereas the inner half, which is the center circle area, gets the least. But what if the distribution is even over the radius, like I mentioned earlier? Well, if this is the case, then 1/4 of the area, which is the inner circle, will end up getting half the shots, giving it a bias toward the center. Now the question that we need to be asking here is, how does this work in Battlefield 4? Battlefield 4 uses the power of dispersion to affect where the bullets land within the spread cone. If we disregard drop, we can consider the bullet path a 2D vector, whose angle is given by these 2 functions. Basically, the important bit here, the one you need to understand, is that it's a random number between 0 and 1 raised to the power of dispersion, and we'll discuss what the power of dispersion is in-game later, times the spread value, which is going to be different from weapon to weapon and shot to shot. For example, on the SCAR, it's going to be 0.2 base, and it'll be increasing with each shot, times either the cosine or the sine, depending on whether you're looking at the x angle or the y angle, a random number between 0 and 360 degrees, or 0 pi and 2 pi radians. Currently in-game, the power of dispersion is 0.5. This gives us the even spread over the area that I mentioned earlier, meaning that the outer ring is actually going to get most of the shots. The spread bias in Battlefield is actually to the outside, which perhaps makes weapons seem a little less consistent than they should be. If you'd like to play around with this a little, Mifili, who's the web developer at Synthic, helped me put together a little JavaScript app. You can see how the power of dispersion affects spread over in the link that I'll have in the description. One more thing before I stop. Yes, you will only be able to use presets in Battlefield 1. You will not be able to use any custom loadouts whatsoever. As far as I can tell, there is absolutely no reason to not like this. It forces players to use setups which are actually good. The primary benefit for this is that I won't get triggered every time I have to pub and see a player using retarded loadouts like H-bar stubby on their AEK. But that aside, the benefit for the player is that they don't have to do a ton of math, or watch my videos, to get good loadouts. They will always have the optimum setup for a given range. For a little example here, H-bar stubby on the AEK is actually a better close quarters setup than comp stubby is on the AEK, but it's worse at range. Now this is very unintuitive to players, that the heavy barrel, which is supposed to be the long-ranged option, makes the AEK worse at range. Now on other weapons, such as the SAR-21, the H-bar is the go-to option for it, because of the convoluted results you can get when selecting various attachment combinations. People who know less about the game end up performing worse, not because necessarily that they're worse players, but because that they're using worse loadouts because the attachment system does not make it clear as to what they should be running. The weapon presets will give you the best possible option for a given range, while still allowing you to customize what range you want to play at. So instead of saying, okay, I'm playing at range, I better use comp stubby, or I'm playing in close quarters with my AEK, I better use H-bar ergo, you can just say, well, I want the artillery preset for my AEK, and then I get ranged performance. Or alternatively, I want the trench configuration for my AEK, and get an H-bar ergo and run with that. And yes, this was confirmed. There was an interview earlier this year with Julian Shimek, the gameplay designer working at DICE SE, and he did confirm that you will only be able to select presets. There is a customization button in-game, but it is strictly for aesthetic and usability stuff, like the camouflage on the weapon and the reticle that your scope has. That's all for the video. I hope you enjoyed.
Objective Alpha is neutralized. 发现了敌兵。We now control objective Alpha. 发现了敌人。I have eyes on hostile AT soldier just south of your current position. Be advised, we've lost control of objective Gulf. 我看见了敌兵。 Now control objective Charlie. Just taking control of objective Bravo. Hey, can I fix your vehicle? Enemy machine gunner at your east. 大家注意，发现敌兵。I've located an enemy sniper south of where you are. Listen up. Objective Echo is neutralized. AT soldier just south of your position. 观察到了敌军反坦克兵。 I have eyes on a hostile sniper just east of your location. Objective Echo has been taken. 发现敌军反坦克兵。We've just lost objective Alpha. I have eyes on enemy snipers at these different locations. 我看到了一名敌兵，发现敌兵。Just south of your current position, there appears to be hostile enemy. 看到了敌军轻型装甲车。Be advised, we just neutralized objective Golf. Come on, let me catch you up. We're taking control of objective Delta.
For those of you that keep asking, yes, the ITX build is coming soon. I'm not entirely sure when, but it's coming sometime. People keep asking to get my overall opinion on the Battlefield 1 beta, so here it is. I'll start with the bad because actually, surprisingly enough, there was not a whole lot of what I found to be bad stuff in the beta, and then I'll move on to the good stuff. And I think you know what I'm going to talk about when I refer to good stuff. And the Lord said, "Go forth and be sniped." Of all the maps to choose here, why Sinai Desert? It's really an awful map. I guess primarily the problem is that there's not enough transport between the flags. If you're an infantry and you want to, move between more than 2 flags, you're sort of out of luck here. Golmud is fine. It's sort of like Golmud, but, with more sand and less jeeps. Golmud is fine because you can always find some sort of vehicle to move from flag to flag. So, well, really, if you're infantry, you're trapped between A, B, and C. It's not too big of a deal because you can move between them very quickly. And there's a lot of action around those points. Sinai Desert, on the other hand, is not so great for that. You can move kind of between Delta and Charlie, but the distance is kind of long. But if you want to move from Charlie to Bravo or Charlie to Foxtrot, well, good luck. It's going to take you half an hour to walk there. Speaking of walking, Echo Point on Sinai Desert is, I see complaints about it, but it's not something I mind at all. I think the flag asset is fine there. You know how I feel about flag assets. I don't like them at all. But I think that the one on Echo is quite well placed. I think there's nothing wrong with it. I think that the existence of a plane spawned on that flag gives an otherwise completely pointless flag quite a bit of usefulness for the team that has it, because as of this point, planes are somewhat useful. Another thing that people love to complain about are the, we'll call them hero classes. They have an official Battlefield 1 name, but I can't remember it for the time being. So we'll call them the hero classes since they sort of function like that. Really, I don't think they're that bad. I feel like maybe I'm one of the only people who doesn't mind the hero classes, but I do not mind them whatsoever. When I initially started playing the beta, I thought, okay, these are terrible. These are going to have to be banned immediately from any sort of competitive play. And then I actually played the game, and it wasn't that bad. Firstly, the really heavy hero classes take a minus 20% penalty to mobility. They don't move around very well. So that means that it's very easy to either go up behind them and poke them with a pointy object, or just use your bayonet charge, which uses the pointy object on the end of your gun. They take practice and teamwork to eliminate, but if you don't have either of those things, or if you're not a good player, you're going to have a hard time when you're playing against hero classes. I like to think of them as sort of mini vehicles. They have health, unlike other vehicles, and they're less mobile, but they're also smaller targets, and thus not quite so easy to hit. You can solo them, again, with pointy objects, but it's usually going to take some sort of teamwork. A good player can take a sentry or the flamethrower guy down by like half, completely solo. I really think the difficulty needed to take them down is quite overblown, and really 1 or 2 guys working together is all you need to eliminate them. That reminds me, since I'm speaking of the hero classes, the cavalry class is bugged, and it will be fixed. The fact that it doesn't take headshot damage and that it doesn't take proper damage when off the horse is entirely unintentional. Nobody meant to give them 200% health when they were not on their horse, so that will be fixed at release. Actually, what's kind of funny is that they take full damage when they're on the horse, like they take 100% damage when they're riding the horse. However, once they get off, they take 50% damage